every third Friday in Arizona is designated Sex Offender Release Day, where convicted sex offenders who are on probation can go to court and have the terms of their probation modified and or completely lifted.
As a father, I would be in jail.
I know.
And you know the thing about it is, if I did that, I would actually be doing real time.
You would be doing more prison time for protecting your child than the person who actually harmed your child.
You would think that America, our sense of justice, our legal system would do everything they could to protect them.
No.
And they don't.
No, there's no money to be made in protecting victims.
There are ramifications. He's sentenced, he goes to jail. It's a kind of a shitty sentence. It was 6 months out of a 25-year sentence.
A victim has to file every year, so a perpetrator's probation ends and then a victim's begins. They have to file every year. I hung up and I thought, I have to go. Because if I don't go and he gets off, I will never, ever forgive myself.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Chad Prather Show. This is part 2, Kayleigh Kozak, and we're going to get into this stuff. When we left, this was a cliffhanger. There was so much going on. It was such a repulsive conversation in terms of the information that was shared that I actually had to go change clothes. I had to put on a different shirt, Kayleigh. I was like, you know what? I'm sweating here. I'm pissed off. I'm angry. For those of you who missed it, in a nutshell, Kayleigh, you are a victim of sexual abuse, 12 years old, 13 years old. You're a 6th grader, 7th grader. This is a this is a soccer coach. This is a PE teacher at your school. If you missed all of that, it's gut-wrenching. You need to go back and watch the last episode.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But the thing about it, Kayleigh, is through it all, you didn't just wake up and you didn't just roll over and say, all right, this is what happened to me. I'm going to be a victim. As you've said, you're a survivor.
Yes.
And you kind of push back through all of this stuff. After all of the things happen, you finally come clean. You talk about what this guy did to you, and there are ramifications. He's sentenced. He goes to jail. It's a kind of a shitty sentence. How many years was it?
There was no years.
There was no years. It was 6 months out of a 25-year sentence, right?
6 months in jail, 2 terms of what we were told is lifetime probation in lieu of extended prison time when he was facing 25 years in prison.
So after you described all that you did for an hour and a half in the last episode, because again, I can't even go back there right now. I'm still just wired up about this. I walked downstairs when we were done. I looked at Party Foul Steve and I said, I would, as a father, I would be in jail.
I know.
And you know the thing about it is, if I did that, I would actually be doing real time.
You would be doing more prison time for protecting your child than the person who actually harmed your child.
Yeah.
Welcome to Policy 2024.
This is ridiculous. So, okay, he gets a slap on the wrist for this deal, and as so many do. And the issue I want to get into in this conversation is how deceived we are in thinking that there is an actual justice system that does a damn thing about these predators, these rapists, these abusers, all these people. It's just not what we think it is, right? He gets a sentence at that stage in the game because you had to become very vulnerable. You had to expose what had happened to you. You had to tell your parents what had happened to you, what had been done to you. It didn't happen to you. It was done to you.
Yes.
And you were very exposed, very vulnerable in all of this. And then this thing escalates in a bigger way than you thought that it would have. There's people, see, they're right now. They're knocking on the door. They're trying to come down here to get you. The dogs are.
I know, but hey, I like that this happens because this is the reality of what victims. Seriously, it's like constant. There's things constantly happening. Just because you're in that situation does not mean that life slows down. So
it doesn't slow down. This is real life.
It doesn't stop.
So there's a there's court, there's accusations, there's court, there's a prosecution, there's all of these things that happen. There's a sentence that's passed down, regardless of how shitty it is. At this stage in the game, did you think, as a young girl, when this happened, did you think, okay, this part of my life, it's over. Let's turn the page. This is an old chapter. I don't have to deal with this anymore.
My parents kept a file from my case, which I'm so grateful for. I tucked that file in the bottom part of my drawer, and that was it. It was done. It was over. He got a lifetime sentence, which means that I wouldn't have to deal anything for the rest of my life. And I closed that chapter. As I mentioned in the last episode, I never went to therapy, but I learned how to deal with things. Sometimes it's amazing when I look back, how I handled everything the way that I did, like so okay. And it's interesting because so many people, I think because I didn't spiral out of control or I didn't do drugs and I didn't drink. I mean, I had a baby in high school who just turned 14. But I think that they don't think what happened to me was that bad because I didn't portray to be that deeply affected.
Yeah.
And so I tucked everything away and I went on with my life, and I call it my 13-year gap. That is a chapter in my book.
Yeah. And you want to go on with your life. You want
Absolutely.
to, but I think a lot of people that have been through what you've been through, they realize they can't really go on because it's sort of like the old man that's kind of hanging on your shoulder, right? Everywhere you go, you're dragging that sense of identity with you. But what's the law? Like, I mean, once he gets out of jail or he's done with 6 months, he really didn't do much time, or let's say life probation, which isn't really life at all. No. Once that probation ends, so while he's on probation, I'm assuming there's a restraining order?
Yeah, so a term of his probation is that he cannot have any contact with the victim or any third party, anything. And that is a term of his standard probation in Arizona. So there's standard probation, and then there's also his miscellaneous probation that can fluctuate depending on what caseload. So
once that probation's over, then it's kind of free game, right?
But why should it be over? It's lifetime.
One would think, but it's over.
Exactly. So he is still on probation, but in the state of Arizona, offenders who are sentenced to so-called lifetime probation can petition in as early as 7 years to have the terms of their lifetime probation lifted. And it's so common that every third Friday in Arizona is designated, and it is we call it Sex Offender Release Day, where the convicted sex offenders who are on probation can go to court and have the terms of their probation modified and or completely lifted. And it's a monthly thing.
That's unreal.
It's very real.
That's unreal. So, and then it's kind of Katie bar the door. These guys have free access to whatever they want to do. I mean, is there? And when I say that, I mean I'm assuming there's a sex registry.
Yes. So sex offender registration.
Sex offender registration.
Yes. Sex offender registration and.
Because I ain't on that list.
Sex offender registration and the terms of their probation are two totally different things. Two totally different things.
How so? Like what? But again, there's a restraining order, which means they can't have contact with the victim, right? But then once that probation ends, now the restraining order goes away with it, right?
It's not a restraining order. It's just a term of their probation.
Okay. So it's not that's just once the probation's over, that's it.
Yes. So if prior to Kayleigh's law, if and when a perpetrator or a registered sex offender had the terms of their probation lifted, then a victim would be left with no protection. There was nothing in place giving them. And not only that, there was no option for them to petition for for them to petition for protection, because in order to get an order of protection or an injunction against harassment, you have to prove that you're in danger. So you have to basically build your case as if your sexual assault or your victimization and that crime wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And that is where Kayleigh's law came to be.
So this just keeps on giving. I mean, like this thing just keeps on. Yes. There's always something else. So that chapter that you wanted to close the book on that we talked about earlier, it just keeps getting reopened on that. So Kayleigh's law, obviously, that's named after you.
Yes.
How did that come to be?
So in 2020, my life turned upside down, not because of the pandemic, but because of my case.
I like that you say pandemic, yeah.
Right. I mean,
we know where she stands.
I'm just saying it like it is. Nothing to fact check here. But So I actually received a phone call from my mom, and I talked to my mom often, but I knew as soon as my phone rang, something was wrong.
Hey guys, for 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been America's only Christian wireless service provider. When I say the only ones, they are the only ones, and I'm so proud of them as my friends and partners for this show. Patriot Mobile offers dependable nationwide coverage, and they're going to give you the ability to access all three major networks. So if you're used to a certain coverage, you can keep that same coverage, but you can also use Patriot Mobile and not fund all of these big companies that send a portion of your bill to leftist causes. So if you switch to Patriot Mobile, you're sending a message that you support free speech, religious freedom, the sanctity of life, the Second Amendment, our military veterans, first responder heroes. 100% U.S.-based customer service team makes switching easy. They will even give you free activation when you use promo code CHAD. You can keep your phone. You can keep your number. You can upgrade. They'll help you do that, but they will find the best plan for your family and for your needs. Go to patriotmobile.com/Chad or call them 972-PATRIOT, 972-PATRIOT, or give them a call or check them out online, I should say, patriotmobile.com/Chad. Join me and make the switch today.
And so I answered the phone and I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "I don't really know, but the Arizona Adult Probation Department is trying to get in touch with you." And this makes no sense, but I cannot explain how out of left field this was for me. My first thought was, did I have jury duty and I missed it? I know it, but to really try to put into perspective how out of left field this was for me, that was my first thought. Because why would I think I would be contacted regarding my perpetrator? It's been 13 years. And she said, well, they want to talk to you because something about his probation. Do you want me to give them your number? And I said, I want you to know what's going on first. Yeah. And I was making my bed. And mind you, at this time, I have 5 children at home. My youngest is a year and a half. My husband was actually on swing shift. So it was just a lot. And I just didn't really know what to think. And so long story short, in this part of it, his probation officer called me, no one else, to tell me that he's completed the terms of his probation, the treatment terms of his probation. I'm very picky with language when it comes to this. So the treatment terms of his probation, he's been an ideal probationee, therefore he's eligible to have his so-called lifetime probation lifted. And I did not understand because I'm thinking, well, he has 2 terms, so wouldn't he have to get them both? And the only thing I could think of was, what protection do I have? So I emailed and said, I'm trying to retain all this information. I don't understand. And she said, well, there will be a court date. And we'll, as a victim, you have rights. And then I'm thinking, what a conflict of interest this is. Why is it feels like it's someone who's on his side. Why is his probation officer calling me? And I said, what protection? And she said, well, let me look. And I said, by the way, and I did not look him up. I want to make that very clear. My family did on the sex offender registry, and he wasn't showing up. And so I said, and by the way, he's not showing up on the public registry. Like, where is he? And she emails me this long email back and is like, so in order to file for a order of protection or an injunction against harassment, you have to prove that you're in current danger. And he's a level 1 sex offender, so he's not on the public probation, the public registry. And by the way, his court hearing is in 3 weeks. And that is how long I had to process.
3 weeks.
3 weeks. And so I was in a very dark place.
I can only imagine.
For 3 weeks.
Now, explain to me, a level 1 means what? I mean, in my opinion, you're either a sex offender or you're not a sex offender.
Let's get to that.
Yeah.
Let's get to that after this part, because that's a whole thing that
Bring
I learned. But in this 3 weeks, I'm calling my parents, asking them questions, trying to fill in the gaps, because I really shut that out. Things would come up and it would kind of hit me, but I learned how to suppress it. I think it's important to note that as a victim, it doesn't matter how much time has gone by. You don't have a choice. Sometimes you can't, feelings are not negotiable. And sometimes they just come in waves, whether it be a song or a smell. And so I'm reprocessing this. I mean, think about like things that you can't explain and it's just a feeling. And imagine the trauma, if you've been through something like this traumatizing. And so I was like, I'm going to court. I deserve to be heard, because I never actually went to court and I never made a statement. I wrote a statement, and that's nothing. Writing a statement is nothing.
And when you wrote that statement, you were how old? 14?
14.
Yeah.
No, I was 15, but close
Still.
enough. Yeah. And it was one page. And so I thought, I'm going to court. I deserve to be heard. I deserve to my voice to be heard. And then I thought, no, I'm not going to court. He doesn't get any more of my time. And the Thursday before the third Friday that I talked about, I still hadn't heard. I had never had a victim's advocate. No one ever called me. I just had spoken to a sex crimes detective. And she's like, well, I didn't know level ones weren't on the registry. And so that was, I kind of got distracted with that. I know. And then she said, wait a minute, you should have received something in the mail. You're opted in for victims' rights. Never received anything. So Thursday night, I had a prosecutor on the case call me, and she said, I'm going to talk to you as if you know nothing. And I said, please do, because I don't. She said,
I mean, you're at a point now where it's like the left arm doesn't know what the right arm's doing, and neither one cares.
And she said, we have court at 8 or 9 tomorrow morning. He has completed his treatment. I cannot have a say. It is at the discretion of the court whether he is eligible to get off probation. You're all I have in my back pocket. And so I hung up and I thought, I have to go, because if I don't go and he gets off, I will never, ever forgive myself. At least I can say I tried.
I'm a gun guy. I love my firearms. I love stockpiling my ammunition. I've got all the stuff out there, but sometimes you run into some things that are a little bit hard to find. That's when I turn to my good buddies over at UnitedPatriotSupply.com. They're not only my friends, they're partners with this show, and I'm proud to know them because they deliver. And let me tell you, when I say they deliver, if there's stuff out there you're looking for and you're having a hard time finding it, I guarantee you there's a very good chance they're going to have what you're looking for. So go out there and check them out, UnitedPatriotSupply.com. Right now, they got a deal going. When you buy a firearm, you can get up to 5 ounces of free silver with every order. So they got a silver incentive program because United Patriot Supply, they're also United Patriot Coin, and you've heard us talk about them as well. So you buy a firearm, you get silver with it. You get a free ounce of silver for every $500 you spend on guns. That's up to 5 free ounces. So you buy a $2,500 gun, guess what? You're going to get 5 pieces of silver. That's a pretty cool deal. So check it out. It's a combined promotion between United Patriot Supply and United Patriot Coin. And just get over there and get to know those guys. I tell you, you're going to love them, and they're going to be a regular stop and shop for you. So head over to UnitedPatriotSupply.com.
And so I called my mom and I said, I'm going. And she said, okay. Called my husband, I'm going. I called my dad.
How did he respond?
My husband?
Yeah.
Very supportive. He was supportive of either way, because obviously this was it affected us.
Sure.
As a whole family unit, everything. And I called my dad and I said, Dad, I'm going. And he said he was not coming. And he said, do you know how stupid you sound? They already have their mind made up and you're never going to change it. And I hung up and I blocked his number, and that was it with my dad.
Really?
Yeah. So.
That's been how many years ago?
Well, I say that was it. That was it then.
Yeah,
a lot's happened since. But, you know, it's interesting because, and I think this is really important to talk about, this also resurfaced for my parents. And I wish my dad wouldn't have said what he said to me, but I can imagine how traumatizing it was for him.
I'm sure in a lot of ways they felt victimized themselves.
How could they not, and lied to? And so my dad, by the way, that's the first time I've ever said that publicly. My dad had told me probably about a week prior, my mom never went to court when he was sentenced, and my dad said, I wish they gave me an opportunity to address him, and I never did, but I wish I would have. So something happened, reality. I don't know, all the feelings, all the things. Again, this resurfaced for our entire family. And so we went to court the next day. It was me, my mom, my sister, and my husband, and the detective that I had spoken to. And I tried to write, I couldn't. And so I just got up there and I spoke from my heart. And
he's there in the room.
He's there, yeah. Ironically, as if you would expect anything differently, they had the detective walk out first because they did not want obviously they wanted her on the end. But it was interesting because we were in the back room and we're watching these convicted sex offenders go up and plead their case. And the first 3 guys got off probation. You want to talk about defeating. So they went out, and I guess too, and not that some of this doesn't matter, but you get off an elevator and you walk into this lobby and you would think you were at a audition for The Bachelor. Everyone is dressed to the T. The smell is what I remember more than anything. The cologne was so heavy, you couldn't breathe. And so I just kind of walked right behind my husband and put my sunglasses on and, because they don't tell him I'm coming, obviously. But we sat in the back room and then he was like number 14 on the list. And they did like a break, and then the prosecutor came in. She's like, well, you're up. And I'm glad she did it that way because I thought I had some time.
Right.
And so we walk in. Of course, we walk down the same exact aisle. So he got up there and pled his case, and then I got up there and spoke. I don't remember a lot of what I said. I will tell you that I was very much in a victim mentality then.
Did you kind of revert back into being a little girl?
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of go back into those emotions.
Yeah, and I had said that I do remember saying that I don't think he ever meant to hurt me. I regret saying that now. I don't care about all the other terms of his probation as long as I'm protected. I regret saying that now. I don't know that I said I forgive him, but I...
So were these testimonies that could be used against your cause because you said them, or was it just a testimony of saying, hey, we're just going to get this out here? This is a confrontational type testimony.
I mean, it's legally, it's through the court. They sealed my testimony as a victim to protect me. I have it. I've never read it. It's been 4 years, over 4 years, and I've never read it.
Don't read it.
I don't want to. I don't feel the need to.
Yeah.
If anything, it'll be in my book, but I don't feel the need to go back and read it. And I just spoke from my heart, but I was very much a victim. And I think, too, when I was there, I couldn't hear anything. All I could hear was wah, 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 wah. I just, it was very traumatic for me. And then something was said about his kids, and I snapped out of it because, oh my God, he has kids. And he was trying to explain when he violated his probation with his kids, and then my heart broke for why did he have children? I didn't need all that information. The judge did not lift his probation, but I had said in my testimony, if you lift this, I will have nothing. I have no probation.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have no protection. And so he did not get his probation lifted that day. And after court, I was bombarded. I was bombarded by people listening who said, oh my God, there is no such thing as post-probation protection. And this one woman, I cannot say her name, but she is a therapist, came in and she said, I've worked with victims and perpetrators. This is genius. Like, you need to pursue this. We'll call it Kayleigh's Law. And I thought she was crazy. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. And she's like, no, you deserve protection. And so she wrote her name and her cell phone number and ripped it off the paper. And we went home and I was like to my husband, how do I do this? He's like, I don't know. So I emailed my senator pretty quickly and said, I just don't know what to do. I didn't know anything about politics. I didn't know what party was affiliated with what color. I never
really?
voted. I'm serious.
Like, no. Yeah.
I was just a stay-at-home mom. I knew nothing. I didn't want anything to do with politics. I knew nothing. And I emailed her, and then the next week COVID happened and nothing else in the world mattered.
I mean, you talk about the perfect storm of just circumstances where you're dealing with that stuff, then COVID happens, the world shuts down. I mean, it's because so many different things changed with all of that.
Well, yeah, and so and I'm sure it changed during COVID, but every third Friday I was like, how many victims are left without protection? How many perpetrators are getting off? So October 30th, 2020, my husband was working night shifts, 6 12-hour shifts on nights. Yeah. We were basically locked in the house. Our kids didn't have school, and school shut down, and I was in a very dark place, the darkest place I have ever been. I was over 200 pounds. I hated everything, and I remember making my son's bed, and I was like, I can't live like this anymore.
I can't imagine. I'm going to text them and tell them to be quiet.
We're doing something.
I know. They don't realize how well the sound travels up here. That's I'm sitting here thinking, you would think that America, Our sense of justice, our legal system would do everything they could to protect victims.
No.
And they don't.
No, there's no money to be made in protecting victims.
Talk about that.
I will. We'll get to that.
I mean,
but listen.
because the problem is, and that's what I was alluding to, because every damn thing.
I know, and we'll get to that. But what I want, and this is why I'm saying we'll get to that, because I want people to understand I knew nothing. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was literally at the darkest place in my life. But that day, everything had to change. And so I started Andy Frisella's 75 Hard.
Yeah. And Andy's a buddy. We love Andy.
It saved my life. That program saved my life. And if there's ever any one thing I want to do, it would be to thank that man, because it saved my life.
Yeah, that's a lot of people, and Andy, for those of you who don't know Andy Frisella, 75 Hard, First Form. Andy Frisella, he's quite the motivational guy. He's an incredible human being, and he and his brother both. And I consider them friends. And I'll tell you this, a lot of people say, oh, well, yeah, I did 75 Hard. It's like, is that a weight loss program?
No, it's a mental discipline program.
And there have been people who have pretended to go through 75 Hard, and you could tell the difference between the people who've gone through it.
I think that program in that time, you couldn't pay me to walk to my mailbox. And so I forced myself to walk with no music, no nothing. And I would go out in the farm fields, and I joke, but I would water the farm fields with my tears, because I was so traumatized by everything that resurfaced, and I was so miserable, but no one else could change it. I had to. And I did that program, and it saved my life. It really did.
That's amazing.
But the same day...
Does he know that? Have you talked to him? Have you been in touch with him?
Yeah, briefly. Yeah. I mean, on Instagram, I wouldn't call that talking.
We'll text him in a little while.
It's such a big part of my story. Like, I couldn't have done it without. But I think, again, it goes back to, like, it's a mental discipline thing. And it's that, quieting your bitch voice and figuring out how to fix something. And I didn't know anything about politics. And that's why 75 Hard is such a huge part of what I did, because I figured it out. I couldn't count on anybody. I had to do it, just like I had to get out of bed, just like I had to change my habits. Yeah. And so I called my senator's office and demanded a meeting until they scheduled. I mean, I called a lot. And so they scheduled a meeting with me. They agreed December 5th or December 8th that year. And I left there hysterical, because I didn't feel like they listened to anything that I said.
Really? Mm-hmm. Just politicians going through the motions.
I don't know what it was. And then I got a phone call in January that they filed a bill it was just 1412 at the time, which is where the clothing company comes from, because change can happen. Yeah. And that is what 1412 signifies to me. So I was like, can you guys give me the 4th grade pamphlet on how to get a law passed? Listening to the schoolhouse or whatever it is, because I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
And so I was like, I need to be here for everything. My first testimony was over Zoom. It was awful. And they're like, you have 90 seconds. And I'm like, 90 seconds? What am I supposed to do in 90 seconds? Now I'm like, 90 seconds, bring it on, motherfucker. Like, my, how it has changed. God, it has changed.
I know the rules now. Yeah. I'm prepared.
Woo! Yeah, cut my mic. That's fine. I know exactly what to do. It's happened to me a few times.
I can only imagine.
But I was so adamant to be there. And so I was actually going in. I had a surgery and had a complication, had to have an emergency surgery. I went septic, and the senator called. She's like, your bill is on for COW tomorrow, which is Committee of the Whole. And I'm like, oh, what am I supposed to do? And the surgeon's like, you can go. And so I drove down there, like, drugged up, and I just stood in the gallery. That's all I was there for. I didn't know that. I'm like, now you couldn't pay me to go to Cal, but I didn't know, but I was going to be there. That's my point. Yeah. I was not going to miss anything, and I was going to let them know that I'm here. And so the original law was a lifetime injunction for victims of sexual assault. Now, let me tell you, that means absolutely nothing. That is an empty bill. And it passed in 4 months with complete bipartisan support and was signed into law on April 20th by Governor Ducey. And I was like, this is great. Now what? I had no idea. We had the implementation meeting because in Arizona, laws go into effect 90 days after sine die, and sine die is when session ends. And they were like, well, this is under a traditional injunction, meaning it's only valid for 1 year, and a victim has to file every year. And I said, stop. This is bullshit. Stop. I didn't say bullshit, but I can say that to you.
Yeah.
Do not
put. Still bullshit.
It is bullshit. Do not put another second into this. How A victim has to file every year. So a perpetrator's probation ends and then a victim's begins. They have to file every year.
See, that's the thing. That drives me crazy right there. The fact that big government exists the way that it does, driven by bureaucrats.
But what did they portray it as? Victims now have
this right, this
lifetime protection.
Yeah, it's not.
No, they
and it's
fucking
not.
don't.
You're the one who has to continually secure it.
I was so mad. Listen, there's my picture. My husband has a picture of me. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a pizza box that said, "Leave me alone," because I had 5 kids. And I was like, how do I fix this? And I was looking up definitions. I don't have a legal degree. I didn't go to school for any of this. And I was like, I didn't know at the time, how do I close this? It's a loophole. Well, there's no legal definition for lifetime. So what if we put natural in there? So that's what we did. And the next year we filed another bill. I think of the bill number, 1583. And that was a natural life protection for the victim that would be served at the time of sentencing. And I wrote this and I submitted it and they accepted it. So I wrote a new chapter under the law, and that it's retroactive in Arizona. And so the retroactive piece is also in there. And so we had put in there natural life protection and people came out of the woodworks. The NRA went in opposition. Do you know why?
Why?
Because if someone has an injunction, they cannot possess a firearm. And so I said to them, when we spoke to them in the courtyard, I said, all I hear is that you're more concerned with providing a pedophile, a convicted sex offender with a firearm than you are protecting victims for their lifetime. That's not what we're saying. That's exactly what you're saying. And the press is going to love this headline. They immediately recanted their opinion.
Thought through that one a little bit.
Yes. So that bill definitely got some pushback in Arizona, but it was ultimately signed into law and fixed, and by Governor Hobbs, actually.
Yeah.
So, which I was grateful for.
Yeah. So that's Kayleigh's law.
No, that was Governor Ducey. I'm so sorry. That was Governor Ducey. So Kayleigh.
Well, let's not give that credit where it's not.
No, but I will give her credit for, she amended it, and I'll give her credit for that. I will. So Governor Ducey signed that amendment. So natural life protection for a victim that's served at the time of sentencing. So Kayleigh's law gives victims and survivors of most notably sex crimes, but there are some other domestic violence crimes, natural life protection for their abuser. The reason that this law is so critical and so important is because, as I previously stated, a victim's only protection falls within the terms of the perpetrator's probation status, but in other states, their sex offender registration status, and we'll get into that. But this was huge. Arizona was the first state in the nation to pass it, and I'm very proud of spearheading this policy.
Have other states implemented it at this point?
Wisconsin was the second state. In 2022, we introduced it, or in 2021, we introduced it, and then in 2022, Governor Evers signed it into law. So basically the same law, except unfortunately it's not retroactive there. Kayleigh's law was killed in California a few weeks ago. The
Shocker.
Democrat Party killed it, although we did pull a Democrat to vote yes. So that felt like something to me.
Believe it or not, I mean, we joke about that, and I say that sort of tongue-in-cheek. There are some Democrats out there. They're becoming very, very few and far between, but there's also becoming very, very few and far between Republicans out there. There are still some politicians and lawmakers out there with a conscience, a little bit of a conscience.
But here's why it was so important.
But it's getting harder and harder to find them.
But here's why this is where people freak out, and this is where, I have another bill I want to definitely talk about, but you don't just try once and give up. Had I done that, Kayleigh's law wouldn't be. Kayleigh's law is a gold standard for protection for victims. And so the fact that we pulled a Democrat to vote yes in favor of Kayleigh's law when their party voted no, and their yes vote did nothing. It's not like it ultimately passed it. She was willing to go against her party and still vote yes. That means something to me, and we will capitalize off of that next session in California.
Rightfully so.
So, and then in Missouri, they held the bill, and so it died, which I'm devastated.
To me, this is common sense. Why would this not just pass unequivocally?
Politics. Egos. That's another one.
This is just weird to me. This is what I'm saying. I said it in the last episode. I'm saying it today. The fact that they bend over backwards to bury this stuff and just sweep it under the rug. So would you think that it's a reasonable goal to say this could get passed in all 50 states? It should be.
It should be. It absolutely should be.
But it gets shut down because of politics.
Politics, egos, all the things.
How? I mean, why? I guess it's the same thing that makes, Donald Trump's under 91 indictments and not a single person that's on Epstein's client list is brought to the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it comes down to ego and politics.
Is it people they're protecting?
So it's interesting, quite possibly, but at the end of the day, this doesn't take away anything, like that argument. Like they can reforming criminal justice and protecting victims can coincide. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So California's big argument is, and they killed Kayleigh's law. Well, they had a couple asinine arguments. I wish I could have recorded my phone call with their policy people, but then I would have been arrested because they don't do that. But it's an ego thing. Well, you're not accepting our amendments. Well, your amendments are shit and you can shove them up your ass. Like your amendments are prolonging a victim's suffering. Your amendments are creating more work for the judicial system. So no, we will not cave to your amendments so that you can say you made these amendments. And that's where egos come in. And I see it every day in politics.
It's ugly. As I've joked before, but I use humor to get a very valid point across, is these guys, they protect their own, they protect their positions, it's a power struggle. They're going to make sure that everything's got to have an amendment, right? It's all
yeah. Well, because once you
qualifications, addendums,
yes,
amendments, all of that.
Something that looks like it's going to be successful, then everybody wants their name on it to say that they had their hand in this. And this is, oh God, when it comes to sex crimes and the topic of just sex crimes in general, it's not a trending topic. So people only want a piece of it when it's trending, or legislators only want a piece of it when their name is on it. Otherwise, no one cares.
Yeah, it just, again, I hate to keep using the cliche, swept under the rug, but it is until it becomes until it's a hashtag. Oh. And it's viral, and then now everybody's talking about these power-hungry bastards that want to just make sure their name's in the headlines.
Yeah, and they want to reshare, and you will never see me just reshare a fucking trending topic or a headline. Like, I can't stand it. And even if I do, I attach the policy to it. I mean, there was Mr. Orange in Arizona, the big Suns guy, and everyone's like, he was arrested for child sex trafficking. No, he fucking wasn't. Do you guys read anything past the headlines? You're a bunch of headline groupies. There's no sex trafficking in this case. None. But God forbid people read beyond the headlines and do their own research. When I look at cases, especially pertaining to sex crimes, I want to look at the policy that's attached to it. We had that Democrat senator who was arrested for sexually abusing his nephews. And there was a mistrial declared, and then fortunately the county attorney brought the case back, and he was charged with one count, and he was sentenced to a year in prison, but he only has to serve 80%, and his attorney has already filed for him to get out. And so, but people are like, oh, he was sentenced, like send him to the wolves or wood chipper or whatever. Do you guys understand with the way the policy is written? He's barely getting anything. We don't even know if he has to register as a sex offender because of the way that the laws are. But what is portrayed in the actuality of what's happening are black and white. The problem with that is that people, because of what's being portrayed, they think that something's actually being done, when in all reality, there's nothing being done. So until we fix the language and the policy, there is no accountability.
I got to sneeze.
Bless you. Bless you again.
You gave me a preemptive bless you.
Bless you.
Oh, my gosh. I'm allergic to the bullshit you're spouting, girl.
It ain't bullshit. It's so real.
Yeah, but it's their bullshit.
It's so real.
It's their bullshit.
Oh my God, it's awful.
So I posted a few weeks ago.
Oh, here we go.
I have a young man that does some stuff for me. He's Amjad. God bless Amjad.
I don't know who Amjad is.
I know he's from Iraq. He's a student at Clemson University. He'll be working in Washington D.C. this year. He's a great dude. Okay. Comes from a great family. They're legal immigrants. And I hired him. I said, I want you to just kind of peruse things that are going on out there, and you shoot me a message or whatever and tell me what's happening. So he sent me, a few weeks ago, the story about the guy in Louisiana who they said, we're going to castrate this guy. And I think I posted on the deal, my caption, I said, okay, because I always put it on Twitter first, and then I'll put it on Instagram.
Hey.
And I said, okay, good for Louisiana for saying this, but then they need to take the next step. Which my next step in the post was like, they need to put a bullet in the back of this guy's head.
What? No. We put him through the wood chipper.
Yeah, I mean, the bullet's too soft. Like that's
first.
merciful. Feet first, always. You know what's funny is I've had people, when I've said that over the years, people online will say, "Why would you do them feet first?" And I'm like, think about it. Really think about it. Okay, like let them go through as much agony as possible.
Let them have that last few seconds of fear.
Let them really think about what's going on. So I did that. You sent me a message and you're like, yeah, but you know this, they're not going to do anything to this guy. It's because everybody made national news that Louisiana was going to castrate a dude.
Louisiana's leading the way.
Leading the way. They're going to cut the balls off this guy. But they're not.
No, they're not.
What's going to happen to this guy?
What's going to happen is he was sentenced to 50 years with no early release. And so it was to make it look like they're appropriately punishing him, they sentenced him to physical castration. And for the record, I think physical castration is totally stupid because it's a mental thing, and cutting off someone's balls isn't going to stop them from, I don't know, taking testosterone or using their fingers or anything. Like,
it's an anatomy lesson. You can lose your testicles and still be a sexual predator.
Seriously, it is so stupid. I just think it's portrayed to be something. So sentenced to 50 years and physical castration. Well, me being me, I immediately go pull up Louisiana's statute. I'm reading through the laws and I'm like, oh my God. They are only required, and I pulled it up before we jumped on this, to physically castrate 1 week prior to release. This motherfucker is 54 years old. He ain't making it to 104 for them to cut off his balls. I'm not kidding. I'm
Kayleigh,
serious.
One of the things that I love about you so much is how blunt you are. And it's like, no, that's pretty solid. So if he were to ever get out,
he ain't getting out. He's gonna die.
Like 4 or 5 days before he's out, he's coming out with a limp, but he's never getting out.
I know he's not, but literally, it's like it says.
So that to me, hang on before you read it. So that to me seems like they're just creating a buzz. They're creating fanfare. They're creating a viral moment, right?
Yes, no different than Florida's death penalty for rape. Don't even get me started on that. Don't even get me started on Tennessee's.
Because they're not going to kill anybody.
Nobody is dying in our lifetime. No one will be sentenced to capital punishment. No one.
Because I had a lot of people, a lot of the Governor DeSantis, who I'm fine with Ron DeSantis,
totally.
But I have a lot of the DeSantis people that came after me, and they're like, "Oh, see, this is the way a leader does things." It's like, yeah, but he's not doing shit. He's not doing that.
Nice headline catcher before you decide to run for president. But hold on. This is exactly what the statute says. In all cases involving a defendant sentenced to a period of incarceration, the procedure shall be performed no later than 1 week prior to the release from the institution. Okay, so let's break that down. Why would they cut his balls off right now or next week or next year? They are not required by law to do so until 1 week prior. If they snip him right now, then they have to pay for his aftercare. They have to provide him the medicine. They ain't fucking cutting his balls off. I'm sorry, it's not happening. But everybody is ranting and raving over Louisiana leading the way. And I'm like, you dumb fuckers, we're never going to change anything in America because you guys believe. So you only believe the mainstream media for things like this, but you don't believe him for other things. Like literally, you're going to see a whole other side of me in this. This is going to be totally different than the last segment we did.
Yeah. That's why I told you guys, you want to stay tuned because we're coming out on the other side and this girl's got gloves off.
God, it makes
I
me
will
so
tell you
mad.
this, in 9 years of doing the Chad Prather show, I can assure you we've never discussed this topic.
What? Cutting balls off. Hey, but ain't nobody's balls getting cut off. It's not happening.
No castration, no giblets are leaving.
But seriously, they put it in the headlines. Louisiana's leading the way. Why do you think this judge did this? This AG did this. They all did this because now they're getting praise. They're getting the attention. They're getting the headlines.
We sound tough.
Ain't nobody's balls or dick or nothing is getting cut off unless somebody has a shank and they do it themselves. But God forbid we don't put the sex offenders in Gen Pop. Now they're even protected.
See, that was my next question.
I know.
Why can't we just stick them in Gen Pop?
Because they don't want lawsuits. Because they know what will happen. You guys, I literally can't. No one. So
there's no justice. There's no real justice.
No, there's not. And until we change policy, which is what I am focused on, And I'm not saying I'm going to change things, but I'm hyper focused on policy to hold sex offenders and the system accountable. And I will call people on their shit every single time. And when I commented on your post, I put the same comment on a bunch of people's posts, and I got a variety of reactions like, this is very misleading, it's misinformation, whatever I said. And I got a lot of DMs, not from you, but from other people saying, well, you're making it like I didn't say this. I'm like, but you're fucking sharing it because it's a trending topic. Like, why don't we share the facts and the reality and the actuality of what the law says? Because now you're misleading people. Here's the other part. It's twofold. When you mislead people with headlines like this, more so the death penalty, you're either lying. Well, you are lying to victims, period, but you're also scaring them. Mm-hmm. And that's something nobody talks about, is that side of it. So I'm not saying this girl, I can't make form an opinion on how she's going to feel. But one thing I can say with confidence is this guy's dick or balls, nothing is getting cut off. He will die. He's going to die. And Louisiana's not leading the way. They're leading lies.
Yeah, he'll die intact. Well, and that's one of the things, like I've talked with my guys, I'm like, listen, before you start sending me stories or stuff, let's be very, very careful with it. Because sometimes things do get shared out there because they are fanciful headlines. And I'm one of those who tries to have a conscience with stuff like that, do a little research, because I've been bitten in the ass by it.
Yeah, and it's easy when it's trending.
But I will say this. I think that beyond trending, I think people they grasp any type of hope. That there is, because people in America have lost all sense of faith in their institutions. There's no faith in medicine anymore. There's no faith in corporate America. There's no faith in the government. There's no faith in the courts. There's no faith in education. On and on the list goes. People just don't have faith in it. And I think they want to have some kind of faith in something, that somebody's going to stand up and do some street justice and say, you know what, we were elected to be delegated representatives of the people who put us here, and by God, we're going to defend these people, life, liberty, property. We're going to do all those things. And I think there is this thing that we want to be optimistic that this is America, and we want to believe that there's people out there who are in power that are fighting back on our behalf. But again, as you're stating, they're not.
No. They're just not portraying that they are.
The sheer fact that we don't know who, and I don't care, I've said this over and over, I don't care who Jeffrey Epstein's associates were. He was associated with everybody. He had a wing in Harvard named after him, for crying out loud.
Wait a minute, you mean he was a predator who yeah.
He was associated with everybody.
I know.
But who were his clients? They weren't going to the island for the jet skis.
We are never going to know. I don't even put a lot of time. When everyone's like, the client list is being released.
Never.
If you go back and look at I'm like, pigs will fly before anyone sentenced to death under Ron DeSantis' death penalty. Pigs will fly before the client list is released. Because people get all excited. They would not have released those court documents that they did. And they also, there was a lot of misinformation surrounding that. Those documents were not from the Epstein case. Those were from a victim who filed a defamation lawsuit against Maxwell. Nobody wanted to talk about that. And then I get frustrated because I'm like, why am I even wasting my time explaining this? Because all people are going to do is run to the bigger accounts that are bigger than mine, to the false information that's being put out by them. And so I'm not going to lie, I've kind of stepped back because it does take my time. I put a lot of time and research into it. But why am I going to keep doing that? And then half the time I get big name people who come after me because I call them on their shit, that there's the misinformation. You're just as guilty now for spreading misinformation as the mainstream media. Yeah. I am interested in solutions and actuality and facts. I am not interested in headline and headline catchers, and you will never see me do that ever.
I knew that the whole thing was farcical when they talked about revealing Epstein's accusers when the person they released was Stephen Hawking. Mm-hmm. Because here's a guy, I think they sat in the room and they go, who's somebody that's dead that there'll be no pushback, but it'll immediately become a meme? Because everybody's going to say, how in the hell did Stephen Hawking go down to Epstein Island and do shit from his wheelchair? Mm-hmm. And sure as shit, all the memes started popping up of, Stephen Hawking, in his wheelchair speeding to the island and the whole thing. Yeah. And I was like, see, they're not serious about revealing anything real.
They're doing it. My husband uses this analogy all the time, and I don't know why. I never understood it. I'm not going to lie. About, like, I'm not even going to say it right because I don't listen when he says it because he says it so much about you could like pluck a chicken's feathers and then like bread them or whatever and they'll come back and then like until you kill them or something.
Yeah.
I haven't so wrong, I'm sure. And, and he's like, that's literally what they do to the people. So now like Epstein, so now who's still talking about Epstein client list? Nobody, because it's out of the trending topic. No one fucking cares. And then I also have another different perspective where I'm like, there are victims behind these headlines and it's insulting to them. It's so insulting, especially these big name people who are sharing misinformation, and it's not okay.
Now I have guilt.
Good.
And conviction.
Because nobody's getting their balls cut off.
No, they're not. Well, that's why, and I think I responded to you in a private message. I said, no, that's why I said now they need to do the next step.
And I did.
Which
I hope
my
you
thing
didn't,
is, no.
I hope you didn't take it like that. And that's why I just said, this is so misleading.
I knew the spirit in which you were talking to me and communicating with me, and I appreciated it because, and again, that's why I said when we posted that, I said, no, you need to take the next step, which my deal was capital punishment. Just saying we're going to castrate somebody, great, kudos, great start, but now you need to take the next step. Because for me, there is only one solution.
There is only one solution.
Anybody, there's only one solution.
But even when I say that,
as you said in the last episode, I don't. You don't therapy somebody out of this.
Yes, and
there's no rehabilitation.
But even that, as much as I and it's not a joke, I do believe it's the only solution. It's not a reality. So what can we do that's realistic? You know, and before people start pursuing capital punishment for pedophiles or rapists, we need to start by fixing the capital punishment laws. And then too, again, people forget about the victims in this. Not you, but do you understand that when someone is sentenced?
Keep saying it.
When someone is sentenced under capital punishment, they have the right to appeal. And you think housing somebody for their natural life in prison is expensive?
Right.
It is triple the amount to put them on death row, not to mention completely re-traumatizing. And then I don't even want to get into, I don't care. You go talk to victims. I wouldn't want that weight. And people can talk a big game, but when you're on the jury and you're deciding someone's fate for death, it might be appropriate, and we can say that, and I'm not against it. But then when you sentence them to that, it's going to be a deterrent. And then the appeals come, and that is awful. So if we're going to sentence a child rapist to death, we need to start by fixing the capital punishment law and first and foremost, taking away their appeal rights, because that in itself is a deterrent for a victim. Also, most victims know their perpetrators, especially rape, and a lot of them are family. Does anybody step back and consider the fact that also could be a deterrent if you have an uncle who's raping a niece? They don't want to live with that for the rest of their life with their family. Oh, you're the reason that Uncle Bobby was killed.
Yeah, this is why there's an empty chair at Thanksgiving.
There's so many things to it. But when I look at the policy of it and what's being portrayed in the actuality, I do get really pissed off and fired up. And it takes a lot to get me there. But I can't stand it because even in Florida, it says, first of all, may. So the whole bill is out the window now because they may, not they shall, they may be sentenced to death or life imprisonment. The whole bill's out the window. Like may, or you've now given multiple avenues for this to go out, and it ain't ending. It ain't ending. It isn't ending with them dying. It's just not.
It's not. It's not. And what I was interrupting you about earlier, as you say, it is convicting to me that I think that we all, when we share these stories, talk about these things, even if we do it with the best intentions, we have to remember that these are not victimless crimes. There's a victim who's living with this, and it doesn't just go away. As we talked about in the last episode, we've alluded to it in this one. It's that thing that just keeps on giving you torment, and it keeps on coming. And every step of the process is more torment.
Yeah.
You had the event, then you had the confession of having to expose, and then you had to testify, and there's the writing of a paper, and then there's passing of bills and laws and watching this thing. You're having to relive this. I mean, you talk about putting this in 50 different states through 50 pieces of legislation, and the thing, dying and then being reintroduced. You're having to relive this for the rest of your life.
Yeah. But the reason the bills that I work on, and we did actually, I'll be honest, we drafted capital punishment in Arizona And it took, we very quickly revised it to natural life in prison because that is a death sentence. And there was the man in Florida who was sentenced to death under their law. But mind you, just because they sentenced him to that, he still had the right to appeal. He still had the right to pursue the insanity. And the victim's family said, please do not do this. We would prefer he be sentenced to natural life in prison. The victim's family. And so I think that's very eye-opening, and it says a lot. And I understand where they're coming from in that. And so we completely recanted our capital punishment because we basically changed under our policy and our language in Arizona for the rape of a child with bodily harm, our ARS codes there, that you can't just be sentenced to death. It's death or life imprisonment to be a class 1 felony, which would make you eligible for the death sentence. And then we kind of took a step back. Well, our governor's never going to sign this. How can we get the Democrats on board? And so we revamped it and rewrote it so it was natural life in prison for those who have committed these crimes. And that is a type of death sentence. Is it the one that we want to see? No. But can you imagine, like, with no option of parole? That's a death sentence. And that's not a fun one. And to me, it's not the easy way out.
Yeah, you know what was it? Not long ago, we celebrate that day where I can't think of the guy's name, where he's on the payphone and the guy that raped his daughter comes walking out of the court and he just turns around and shoots him in the head. You know,
I have
the
no
dad.
idea what you're talking
You
about,
haven't seen
honestly.
that? Oh, you can see
No.
that. That's a pretty famous. That one happened about 35 years ago.
Okay, well, that was before I was born.
I know. It's a pretty popular deal. We celebrate the day every year. I can't think of the guy's name. It's whatever his name is day.
Okay.
Where he's on the payphone on the, you know, they got the wall, the bank of the payphones. And he's
For
on
those
the
of
phone.
you that don't know what a payphone is.
And yeah, exactly. I'm laughing to myself about that. And they're walking this guy out of court. He had raped his daughter, and the guy just turns around, walks up beside him, and just pops him in the head.
Yeah, well,
Pulls his pistol and shoots him in the head.
the other part that no one talks about is that capital punishment for rape has actually been deemed unconstitutional. And so even if you get that far in the process, then you have to go through that part of it. And I highly doubt it's going to be overturned. That's just my opinion. But
Probably not.
But the headline said.
Headlines say.
The headline said. So everyone should jump on.
I encourage everybody to follow you on social media because your memes are fire. I mean, the stuff that you put out there is very to the point, and you reveal a lot of stuff that people aren't thinking about. There's a lot of stuff out there.
There is. I think my biggest one that ever got shared was the meme of Drake, where it's like the standoffish one, and then whatever, and it was like Democrats or liberals be like. I don't even remember what it was, cutting off a pedophile's genitals and whatever, cutting off a child's genitals, like acceptable or whatever. Yeah. That was like my biggest one.
And that alludes to the thing about all the people that push back on the capital punishment thing. And I'm like, you just want to, you so-called Christians want to end somebody's life. Yeah, actually, Jesus actually called for it.
So
Jesus actually said better for them.
Better for he to be thrown to the ocean with a millstone, Mark 9:42. It's actually referenced multiple times in the Bible. No one wants to talk about that.
That's right.
So
and you're more than willing to, murder unborn babies.
Okay, so I was in it was a calm, heated meeting. It really was calm with more Democrats than Republicans. And again, I don't give a shit. If you're willing to meet with me and talk, I'll always talk to you.
Sure.
And they said, we don't believe in killing people. And I was like, unless those people are in the womb. And I got them on it and they're like, fair enough. But, and one of them, a lot of that, again, comes back to donors and things. Like there's so much to Chad, if I shared everything I do in a day on social media, I might as well be live. I don't share 90% of what I do and what I work on because a lot of it's behind the scenes in meetings. Because I am not interested in just posting headlines and this shit. I'm interested in creating actual change and actual solutions. We cannot get to the top of the mountain overnight. We have to take small steps. That is what I'm interested in. And it's very time consuming. It's draining. But I have been very successful in it. And I'm proud of the work that I've done, my healing, that I'm able to do this. It doesn't mean it still doesn't take a toll because it does. And ultimately getting Kayleigh's Law passed is the goal. Yeah. But in the meantime, I have 6 bills in Arizona right now, 4 that Hobbs has already signed into law this session. And that's huge, you know? And one of those bills got me in big trouble last year. It was on national news because I said I was disgusted
I will say one of the things that I've tried to do in recent days using this show and other aspects of my platform is to try to point out how citizens who have been through certain circumstances are making a difference in legislation and stepping up, writing bills, pushing things through, showing up. That's a big part of it.
Oh, that's 90% of it.
And knowing what you're talking about when you get there, finding allies in there. And again, I agree with you. I don't care if they're Republicans, Democrats. I don't care if they're lawmakers, if they're representatives, if they're in there and they're willing to listen to you. Let's talk to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because this is a travesty of justice. It really is. The judicial system in America has become a tyrannical force. No one has any trust in the institutions anymore, and that's a big one. So, I'm so thankful that you're a lion. I mean, you are one of those who you're not shying away from anything.
No.
And
I don't give up because things get hard. And
well, there is a lot of people out there who would just say, "Listen, I've already been through enough hard stuff. I don't need to go through this crap anymore. Like, I don't need to keep making myself vulnerable to that." But fortunately, there's a few people out there like you who are willing to do it. Because it's necessary.
Yeah, because I don't want people to have to live with the things that I've had to live with or experience. No one should have to go through this hell. And that's why, Kayleigh's law was so important, because if a victim can serve at the time of sentencing and they're protected under the terms of probation, or if they're protected under Kayleigh's law and no longer the terms of probation or sex offender status, we just save them so much trauma and re-victimization. Another bill that I worked really hard on that I don't know, it's not about, and I don't talk a lot about it because it's not about, it's not about me, but it was very personal to me, was the DCAC bill. And so in Arizona, you have 3 tiers of sex offenders, which most states do, but where Arizona is different is Arizona, you're charged, convicted, sentenced, and then you're assessed. So Arizona owns its own risk assessment. It's a 19-question general risk assessment that determines what level you are. Texas doesn't do that, just so you know.
Right.
We're the only state in America that does this. Texas does have a risk assessment, but not like ours. Texas is more in compliance with SORNA, which is the Sex Offender Registration Notification Act, all that. Arizona is out of compliance. The problem is under this risk assessment, you can have been convicted of committing a dangerous crime against a child. That's the most, under 13705, the most heinous crimes, in my opinion.
Sure, absolutely.
And you can be deemed a level 1. If you're a level 1 sex offender, you are not listed on the DPS public registry. Because
the guy who did what he did to you was listed as a level 1.
So 3 of those questions was the victim a male or female? Female, 0 points. Male is 3 points. Both genders is 5 points. I want to know where the ABC Club is. Where are they at in there?
Wow.
I'm kidding. I said that.
Yours is true, though.
I said that in committee once, and they didn't like it. Another question is...
I bet they did, but
they didn't
screw
like
them.
It. Well, it's true. You want inclusion. Where's the inclusion? Mm-hmm. Another question was the victim a family member or an acquaintance? A family member is 0 points. An acquaintance is 5. Another question is, was there 1 victim or plus 1 victim? 1 victim is 0 points.
What the... Kayleigh, shut up.
I'm serious. So listen to this. You can have a man who's masturbating and a mom catches him on camera. Okay. She'd probably get in more trouble for filming, whatever. And so because he was at a park, there was boys and girls present, more points. Because there was more than 1 victim, more points. Because there was, it was acquaintances and not family members, more points. Or you can have an uncle that continually molest his niece, and because it was female, 0 points, family member, 0 points, 1 victim, 0 points, 0, 0, 0. They're considered to be a lower risk level. This is in Arizona only. This is only pertaining to Arizona. And so I feel very angry about that, because it's all fucked up in its own way. It needs to be fixed. It's a money grab, by the way. If I had my little board with my pens, you'd see. But the fact that Arizona has over 5,000 level 1 sex offenders that have committed a dangerous crime against a child, and they are protected. They're protected sex offenders because they're not listed on that public registry, is not okay. And so 3 years ago, I drafted a bill to put a DCAC, if you've been convicted of a DCAC, on the public registry. It died in committee. Last year, we brought it back. We did completed or preparatory because of how it's a big circle jerk. That's what everybody needs to understand. The judicial system is a big circle jerk.
Circle jerk.
It's a big circle jerk. With the prosecutor, the defense attorney, the judge, it's a big circle jerk.
Anybody that's been in the court system for any reason whatsoever has no problem believing that at all.
It's a big circle jerk. Nobody has any balls. Maybe they cut their ball. I don't know what's going on.
Maybe they got
maybe they experimented on them. Nobody has any fucking balls anymore. It's a big circle jerk. And so we completed our preparatory for the DCAC to be listed on the public registry regardless of their risk assessment level that they were deemed. Governor Hobbs vetoed it last year. Okay, that's fine. Well, guess what? Guess what I brought back again this year? The DCAC bill. But guess what I did this time? I whipped Democrats. I got Democrats on board. I got Democrat co-sponsors, and I had bipartisan support, and we got the DCAC bill passed. So now, this is another thing. You don't just pass a law like that. Or you don't pass like loose language. They have 12 or 15 months. We gave them 15 months to upload these people. They tried to tell me they tried to tell us they needed $100,000 to hire 2 people. For what? What do you need for what? What are you hiring people for? Well, to go through the cases. Wait a second. Sex offenders are required to register annually on their birthday month. Is there a questionnaire that DPS does? Yes. Okay. So add the questions was the convict, felon, whatever, convicted of a DCAC under 13705? Yes. If so, upload onto the system. Okay. You're not adding work. You don't need to hire 2 people. That's what's wrong with this. You're complicating something that shouldn't be. This is very simple, but you're making it more complex than it needs to be.
Yeah.
And so we fixed it and it was signed into law. And so DCAC offenders will be uploaded onto the system within the next 15 months.
Keep kicking that ass.
And, yeah.
I'll tell you, got to check our time here because we got to get you. You got to go to the airport.
No.
And what's funny to me, it's not funny, but it's concerning, is how many laws out there. You think there are things in place that aren't.
There's not. There's not.
Like we were talking earlier about in Texas, if an educator has a relationship with someone under the age of 18, they're not required to be on the registry.
If they're convicted and it's a sexual crime and it's so much more extensive than just it's improper relationship. But yeah, under Texas law, that educator would not be required to be listed on the registry.
With an improper relationship.
Yep, which is sexual crimes. They put all the things in there. I pulled up. Do you want the ARS or the penal code? I have it.
No, I don't need it. I think people need to know that, though.
But they think
and people, and I know there's going to be people who push back and they're like, yeah, but okay, well, go figure it out, because in your little journey and search, you're probably going to find a lot of things that you think are law, and they're not.
Yeah. And my point of bringing up the DCAC bill was this hasn't been easy, and it failed twice essentially. But you have to stay consistent. You have to keep showing up. You cannot. No one's coming to save you. No one's coming to do that work. You think I like fucking going down there and fighting with I mean, okay, I do. I do like going down there.
You get a little bit of joy out of it.
I do.
Yeah.
Someone asked me,
but it's your retribution in a way.
Someone asked me what I do for fun, and I said I like to go fight with legislators and put them on blast, and I'm so good at it. And I'm only well versed in this one area. I'm not ever going to go into a lane that I'm not educated on. But they don't even engage with me anymore. They don't want to be featured on my Instagram. But my point is that you cannot expect someone to show up. If I had $1 for every time someone said, we'll be there to support you or show up, I'd be rich. No one fucking shows up. I have no expectations. You go and you do it and you keep going until you get it done.
How can this audience help you? Can they, they can support you. They can follow you on social media. They can educate themselves. I don't care. I'm asking for it. Like, how can people help you?
I mean, honestly.
You got a website.
Yes, I do have a website. It's becauseyoustillmatter.com.
Becauseyoustillmatter.com.
And that's why I fight this. I fight this because you still matter. And that actually came from my 3 weeks that I had to process when I had to go back to court to face my abuser. Why are you doing this, Kayleigh? Why are you putting yourself through this? Is this torture? Because you still matter. That's why. And that's where because you still matter came from. Yeah. And I am fighting for anybody who's been victimized because you still matter. So I do that. I do share a lot on Instagram. I don't just share that. I share the headline, but I share the policy attached to it is the biggest thing. But honestly, we started 1412 Clothing Co., which is the Team Wood Chipper. Mark 942. He's got it somewhere.
I got it right here. I love this.
You know, we have the only solution with the wood chipper. So just some merch. And
Team Wood Chipper. Everybody needs to go get one of these. Wear it in solidarity.
well, I love it.
Absolutely. You got the Mark 942, which of course millstone.
Even Jesus says.
Yeah. Jesus said it.
Yeah, I have one shirt.
Better for you if that's what happened to you.
Yeah, I have one shirt on the back that says MAP. You know, minor attracted person, because they try to say that crossed out. Must alienate pedophiles is more appropriate to me, but what do I know? So a couple things on there, but all that goes directly to funding my mission. And I say that because I don't get paid for this. This is all, my husband works an insane amount of overtime to be able to fund for me to do this. You know,
I asked you earlier, I was like, do you have a job / career? I mean, this thing, and you're like, this is what I do.
I make pedophiles' lives hell. That's what I do.
What I do.
And I'm hyper focused on the policy, so I do that. But I don't make money for this. And I believe that God will he'll provide, and I trust him and his timing, but I can't walk away from this because I don't make money. I feel that way. So does my husband. This is bigger than me, and I'm living this. And I think that's the big thing too. Yes, what happened to me happened, but it's still happening, and I'm living it. And so I want to help others because I don't want them to have to go through this. And I believe that when we have knowledge, we have an obligation. I have knowledge of the problems and the loopholes. Therefore, I have an obligation to do what I can to fix those and close the loopholes that exist in the law. And that is what I intend to do in my short time here on earth.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing what you've shared. I mean, we've spent a couple hours together now between 2 episodes, and
all the coffee.
As you say, all the coffee. What you said is pretty profound right there. When you receive that knowledge, there's a responsibility. There is to whom much is given, much is required. What happened to you is tragic, but what happened to you, as you know, as we've said over and over again, it's more than a cliche that all things work together for good to those who are called, love the Lord and are called according to His purposes. Yes. And you and I, we're pretty abrasive people. We can be. We're pretty in your face. There's not a whole lot of filter here. We talked about that. I am
just passionate. And I am nothing else.
I get that, and it's just boom. And we can laugh about that and joke about that. But let me tell you something. You are here for such a time as this. What you've been through, God has never turned a blind eye to that. And I believe that He's going to honor the sacrifice. Let's go that. I won't say the victimization. It's the sacrifice, because you made a sacrifice. You didn't ask for it. You didn't volunteer for it. But you didn't volunteer as tribute. But no. You've taken what happened, and you've become a voice for millions, and somewhat of a sacrificial lamb that brings freedom for a lot. And so, thank you for doing that. Thank you for coming to hang out with me, and because it does mean a lot to me when you do that, and it's just, you're a cool person, first of all, and I'm thankful for your husband for giving your day away and the kids and all of that. So, and I will say publicly, as I'll say to you privately as well, if I can use anything, you're my friend, so anything I can use my platform to do to help promote, push, encourage, whatever, I'm here. I'm at your disposal. So
I appreciate that. Yeah. And thank you for having me on. I believe awareness without action is like planting a seed and not watering it.
Yeah.
But I do also understand that I'm not a talker. I am a talker, but I'm not just a talker. I'm a doer. And so sometimes it's good for me to sit down and just have these conversations to educate people, spread awareness. And more so than anything, I want to give them hope. Mm-hmm. That there are still good people, that change can actually happen in this fucked up world that we live in. It can happen. And I've seen it, and that's why, again, 1412, the tag says change can happen, because it can. It may not. And if you don't feel like David in your fight, like you're not going up against Goliath, you should probably find another fight, another battle.
It ain't a big enough fight for you.
Yeah. And we're all called to do different things. And like I said in the last episode, as hard as it is, and the hard days, the days where I can't get out of bed, because they do exist. I want to do what God has called me to do. I don't want to stay in my own comfort, and that's not always an easy thing.
No, it's not. Especially these days when people's default setting is lazy. Just kind of just go into the.
Yep.
Kayleigh Kozak. Follow her on social media. We'll slap all the necessary addresses down here so you can see them. Take a little screenshot of your screen real quick. So you're like, oh, where did he say go? Go right here. And increase her following, increase her platform, enlarge her tent, because let's just face it, y'all ain't saying shit. Some of you are.
And if you are, it's just...
It ain't enough.
It's just a...
So my thing is, but my thing there, I say that jokingly because I like to just grab people by the throat, but at the same time, it's like you're in an arena that not everybody can enter into.
Yeah.
You have a mantle placed upon you. There is a grace. To me, the definition of grace is the power of God to do what He's called you to do. There's a grace mantle upon you to go out there and do something that not everybody can do.
Yeah.
As you said, there's a passion. I have people all the time who's like, man, I think we ought to have this Bible study for these kids. And I'm like, do it. And they're like, we want you to come do it. And I'm like, no. God laid it on your heart. You need to do it. I'm not being mean. It's your calling.
If we as individuals stepped into the purpose that God has made for us, our purpose and what He put us here for, we would be so much better off holistically. Because we have to stop chasing what we think we should do, and we have to start stepping into where God has called us and our purpose. That is critical, and we would be so much better off that way. We cannot all do everything. We can't. But step into where God has called you. Step into your purpose. Embrace it. Embrace the suck. Roll with it. And don't let all the hard times be a deterrent. Grow. Learn from those things. I mean, there's just, yeah.
There you go. Can't say it any better. I put the little bow right on top. All right. 5 stars is what we deserve. Leave us a rating. Leave us a review wherever podcasts are offered. Thank you. Share this show with your family and your friends. Share the last episode as well, because there are people out there. There are people who have been through some things. I'll tell you this: whether you've been you've been a victim of sexual abuse, there are a lot of people out there that have been victimized and made vulnerable by other people, and the principles still apply.
Absolutely.
The principles still apply. The fight still applies.
Absolutely.
Because there's shame that needs to be lifted off of you. There's a sense of guilt. There's all these different things. You know, what did I do that brought this into my life? The principles still, they apply. So handle it with grace, because again, God's got a big calling for you as well. So share this thing. Thank you. This was fun. We're going to do it again. We're coming to Phoenix. We'll come hang out with you guys. We'll come hang out with the family, and it'll be a party.
Yeah,
all right.
Of course. Thank you.
As for our audience, guys, I love you so much. I appreciate you. Drop me a line, chad@thechadprathershow.com. You can leave me your email address, thechadprathershow.com. You know all the places to find me. WatchChad.com, the most vain website address on the planet. I don't know what you're watching me do, but it's where all the fun stuff is. WatchChad.com. Find me out there for a live show. As always, listen, I like to have fun. I like to have a good time. We do that at live shows. We do it all the time. But man, it's okay to have fun and still deal with these serious issues. And these are issues and conversations that are worth dealing with. So let's keep in that fight, all right? Because it ain't going away anytime soon. I love y'all. God bless you. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.